I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up. Then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Do Hard Things podcast. I'm your co-host, Gabe Lullo, and we have a powerhouse guest joining us today. Super pumped. VP of Brands and Partnerships at Bent Pictals, Justin Zelik. Now, he has a wealth of experience in the creator economy. We're going to talk a lot about that. Also, digital media, entertainment. He's a true expert in connecting brands with the most engaged audiences. Also, Bent Pictals is a phenomenal company. We're a big partner of theirs and collaborator, and we love what they stand for and what they do. And they do innovative strategies, leveraging exclusive partnerships, over 700 top YouTube channels, from media buying to content creation. It's been incredible, and Justin's been at the helm helping the company expand and has a vast background even before that, which we're going to get into with our guests. So, Justin, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Nice to see you, Gabe and Lexi.
Awesome. So my first question, and I know Lexi's chomping at the bit because this is her world too, content, right? And marketing. So she's really excited that she's here to ask you a bunch of questions too. But my favorite thing to ask all of our guests before we get started is origin story, right? The concept here is do hard things. It's not easy to get to where you're at. A lot of our audience members are just getting into sales or marketing. Maybe they're junior in their career and they want to be at where you're at in their career one day. Or we have people who are at where you're at and they want to know, okay, how do I, do what I do better? And they're going to learn a lot today. But taking you through your origin story, like why brand partnerships? Why marketing? Why content? Like where did you get the buzz for this?
Yeah, I mean, Gabe, I could go back pretty far here and give you the whole spiel, but I'll try to do it relatively quickly. When I was a kid, I was just obsessed with movies, basically. I wanted to be the next Quentin Tarantino. It was the 90s, and that was what my goal was. And so my parents bought me, a Super 8 or a High 8 camera. I would make fun videos at my house, and my brother and my dad typically starred in them. And so I always wanted to be involved in content. So I went to film school, but this was during the early aughts. And while I'm there, a lot of things happened that completely obliterated the landscape, namely the advent of YouTube and Facebook. So now the way people are consuming content and the way content's being distributed is just totally different. And my entire vision for how I was going to go about becoming the next Quentin Tarantino is just not practical anymore. So I had to be open-minded about what was next. And really, I ended up going to a talent agency, ICM. They ended up getting acquired. They're not around anymore. And then a production company, then a television station. And so I'm kind of sticking in the traditional media kind of area. But while that's going on, I'm paying attention to social. And I'm realizing social and digital media is the future. And so, it was kind of a weird thing that happened where I was, working at Weigel Broadcasting in Chicago. We were running classic television, Gunsmoke and I Love Lucy and Three Stooges. And we're trying to figure out, how do we get a younger audience to engage with this? And, one of the things I came up with was we had this super sci-fi Saturday night TV block that was Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman. And it was so kitschy and ridiculous. I think if you guys are familiar with those shows, that I was like, you know what? At this time, millennials was the target. Now everybody's talking about Gen Z, but I was like, millennials love irony. And wouldn't it be fun if we put hashtag MeTV Superman? That was the station, MeTV. Hashtag MeTV Batman, and encourage people to talk about this online. This could be fun. And so, it took some convincing of the higher ups there, because again, they were a traditional broadcast group, and Twitter and watermarks with a hashtag on the television screen. Isn't this going to be distracting? Our audience doesn't want to see that. But they took the suggestion. We went ahead and we put that up there. We encouraged people to interact with it, and we were trending every Saturday night on Twitter. And this really kind of spurred my passion for more of the digital social space. And it was really, at that time where I decided to really dive in headfirst to the digital component of media. And where my value lies is in that I'm always thinking about culture. I'm really culture obsessed. Where are people engaging? What is trending? Where are things moving? And realize the value I can provide is helping brands, which oftentimes move really slowly, stay ahead in that culture, right? Because one of the best things brands can do is celebrate culture. The problem is oftentimes they're like 3 steps behind. And frankly, the best way in 2025 and that brands can stay on top of culture and ahead of things is by looking at it through the lens of creators, because they're always going to be the ones that are on the tip of culture. They're the ones that are, they've generated that audience that they have, that following that they have, because they're tapping into something. So it's a huge opportunity for brands. And, I've been lucky enough to participate in that by helping brands work with these creators in order to do exactly that: celebrate culture, but do it in an authentic way, and through that creator lens.
Love it. Awesome. Amazing. What a story, man. Thank you for taking me through that. Lexi, I know you had some questions on your side, so I want to get out of your way, but what do you got, man?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot came up while you were just going through your story. So I'd love to know, what do you think has changed the most, and how have you adapted to those shifts? What do you think the future will be? And I know you mentioned hashtags. Do you think those are still relevant? Love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, hashtags, not so much. I mean, most platforms have just optimized to be reading what's in the content itself, so you don't necessarily need a hashtag. But my, oh my, has there been a ton of evolution. And it's always changing. And that's what's so fascinating about this space. So what was relevant yesterday and best practices yesterday are going to be different, at a short time in the future. It's not going to take long before the tide turns. And if I'm thinking about, where things are moving, I think when TikTok came to fruition and people started jumping on TikTok, that changed the game. It completely changed the way that we consume content. It became all about this feed that is algorithmically driven, video first, sound on, very immersive way of experiencing content. If you think about prior to that, Instagram and TikTok, or Instagram, I should say, pause. If you think about prior to that, it was static imagery. It was a very passive experience. You were kind of just, picking this up and looking at it while you're on a bus. There could be a million people around you. Not that you can't still do that, but again, it became much more immersive. And this was really exciting for the last 4 or 5 years. But ultimately, what kind of happened in that process is it's all about your personalized algorithm now. It is all about the content. And now the creator themselves and the influence that that creator has been devalued on those platforms. So you still need to be there. You need to be on those platforms, but really approaching it in a different way. So if you're going to partner with creators on those platforms, you should be thinking about long-term partnerships, right? Because it's a frequency game now. Just working with them and thinking that you're going to get through and get in front of their audience, it might not happen. The algorithm just may not serve you in that way. The content could flop. Who knows? So longer term partnerships are important. I think creativity to really stand through, shine through is important. And also paid media behind that content is important. But I think right now where the value isn't on those platforms. The value is actually, or I should say, I think where the biggest opportunity is on YouTube. YouTube right now, to me, is exactly where you're going to get the real influence. People come to that channel to watch the creators that, they're subscribed to. When they release a new video, they want to go see that. So the creator themselves has that community that they have influence over. Very different from those other platforms. I also think long form content, granted YouTube has shorts and long form, is a much better environment to reach a consumer from a brand standpoint. We all know the doom scroll and that feeling you get kind of when you're done, like after like an hour session, you're like, where am I? I'm totally disoriented. And honestly, I think the recall, is not there, certainly not where it is on YouTube, where you're dedicating, an extended period of time to that. And I'm not being bombarded with just an enormous amount of content in such a short period of time. So I would focus on longer term partnerships and paid media if you're looking at those other platforms, and really take some time. And it's different and it's a little daunting getting involved in long form content and thinking about YouTube in maybe a more strategic uh, uh, focused way, but there's so much opportunity to unlock there. And especially with the rise of connected TV. YouTube now is the most watched thing on television sets, more than Netflix, more than Hulu, more than Disney Plus. It is the most watched thing on television. So you have this really interesting intersection of the creator economy and connected TV happening in one place. And again, it's a little bit daunting for a lot of brands who've been in that TikTok, Instagram ecosystem for the last 5 years, but I think that's where the opportunity is today.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I've seen so much from TikTok lately, especially with talks of bands, of creators pushing all their content over to YouTube. So I think it's going to be a large shift there. So it's exciting.
And you've got shorts as well. So, I mean, there is also the short form content that, you could tap into, and that's really great for discovery. And again, there is a ton of value in that short form content. I think it does, really help drive discovery for brands or particular products. But, if you're looking to drive influence, if you're looking to really make an impact with consumers, drive loyalty, YouTube is where you should be focusing your attention.
Awesome. I got to switch gears. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts on this. In partnerships right now, we've doubled down on it. We built an amazing network of referral partners. I think it's making sense from what you're saying, right? This organic connection when it comes to content creation and making, authentic content, but also how to use it is to really not just get customers, but to get partners and referrals. And it's just this social networking that's happening, especially in the business to business world, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of business to business partnership networks being created, communities as well. What are your thoughts on that? And where do you see, whether, it's real life examples at your current company, or where do you see really the B2B space, the B2B industry going in partnerships as a forefront to their go-to-market strategy? And how can content creation elevate that partnership?
I mean, there's so much opportunity in B2B. It is an enormous uh, sector that really has always been, kind of boring. They, not that they haven't made content, but like, think brochures and kind of boring websites with an ebook and all that type of thing. And I think what's really changed the game there is LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn, when we think about how we were on LinkedIn, years ago, it was to find jobs and really a utility type of platform. And if you weren't really searching for a job, you really weren't on the platform. I'm on LinkedIn every single day. And it's not even because I'm prospecting on LinkedIn. It's because I am getting my information. It's how I keep abreast on the industry, the people in the industry, and just news. But I think the former, the part about where people in the industry are moving, what their opinions are, is really where all that value comes in. So I think there's an enormous opportunity for businesses to be creating content and, doing so in a really more modern capacity where, again, it's not a tutorial video necessarily, or it's not, just uh, an explainer video, but it's more, it's podcasts.
Amazing. Absolutely. And we prescribe to it as well. Like, business to business, to your point, is super boring and has been, asking for a white paper or creating a case study, right? Those are things that are old school. And, clients aren't asking us for a white paper or a case study or a deck, right? They're asking for podcasts or, customer testimonial videos or, industry, trends that we're staying ahead of the curve. So that's how we are seeing it. But I got to ask, because you're the one doing this, how do you get a outdated, maybe old school CEO who has been doing their go-to-market strategy for 10 years on board with creating content? Like, because right now it's not a marketing function as much is as a CEO or founder-led marketing, right? We've heard of founder-led selling.
Oh, yeah.
But founder-led marketing is now big, and it's not just for the small companies. Henry Shook at Zoom Info is a great example. We're friends with that company and him, and it's $1 billion company, but he's doing most of the marketing on LinkedIn as the face of the company, creating content. And so that's becoming more and more the case. So how do we get maybe an outdated old school CEO to buy in to, hey, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn is not just, what your kids are on with their cell phones. It's actually the way to go to market in a B2B landscape. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. One, there are a lot of old school CEOs out there who still really think that a sale will happen, a transaction will happen purely by just hammering somebody. And you can own that entire process from beginning to end as a salesperson. But the reality is there's a million touch points in 2025, right? I could talk to a person, tell them the exact story I want them to digest about the value that we're bringing to the table, about why that value is so important in this current environment. But in the end of the day, they're going to go on my website. They're going to go do their own research. They might hear from somebody else, an opinion on the company. There's so many, because we're so interconnected because of social media. So, it's tough to get an old school CEO that doesn't really understand that on board. But, where I've seen success in doing that is illustrating how the individual contributors are getting their leads, and a lot of times that comes down to the content that they're posting, um, and kind of explaining it that way, and then letting them understand, listen, if we did this on maybe a bigger level, maybe if it were coming from you, there could be even greater returns on something like this. So I think, bringing people into the company that understand this, a more modern sellers can illuminate, maybe an old school CEO to some more modern practices. I also think, this is a bit of a function of the marketing team, like maybe, it's somebody on your marketing team that kind of forces this a little bit upon the CEO, right? Like just they're going to handle it. They're going to do the posts, but they're going to get the content from them, whether that be, I'm going to ask you questions about some relevant things and we can create a post out of it. Or, I'm going to start filming you saying certain things. We're going to find the gold nuggets here and we're going to post those online and we're going to optimize. We're going to see how this works, but really kind of forcing that function from the marketing team, because, any marketing team these days knows the value of content and knows the value of having all these different touch points. And so, they're going to have to do what they can to get content out of the people that, are really running the show, because that absolutely is going to help bring some credibility and some interest from, potential customers, because now they can interact with this content. They could see directly from the horse's mouth and not just the salesperson that I'm talking to, uh, uh, what's so exciting about this organization, why I should be working with them. And, it's going to mean a lot coming from the CEO.
100% agree. Yeah. Great. So I think it's huge getting the CEO on there, getting large voices from the company out there, especially on LinkedIn. I think it's so great. But when do you think is the right time to bring in those collaborators and influencers that can bring those partnerships and really elevate that content?
Yeah, I do think that it depends on the size of your business. It depends on the market penetration, the competition, your budget. There's so many factors that go into this. If you're in a extremely competitive space, um, and you want to break through, bringing third parties in to vouch for your product, and again, this is B2B or B2C, um, is going to make a huge difference, but that costs money, you know? It comes from your budget. So, if you're really a startup and you're trying to really just first get the message out there and you're working very lean, organic content is really, it's amazing. That is where you should start, and you should try to see if you can grow an account, figure out what type of content's working, and really experiment with just providing value, and then bring people in. Maybe once you get a little bit of traction, once you learn what works and what doesn't from your own perspective. But if you're like really an established company and you have the budgets, and you're not already, tapping creators or influencers, again, B2B and B2C, however we want to think about this, to really endorse your company, your brand, uh, then you're falling behind. Because, if you're that well established, either people are coming for you, or you're in a market that, there's clearly demand. It's been around for a while. And yeah, if you're not already working with influencers, creators, and having them make content, amplifying that content, all the above, your competition is. So you should be doing that.
So content's a long game, right? There's ROI. There's, obviously everyone, we just talked about why the value is there and why it should be done. Everyone's doing it. It's the right way to go. But how are you tracking and how are you seeing those results? And then how are companies, looking at it, say, okay, this is working, right? And let's double down, triple down, or stop or pivot. How do they know how to make those strategic decisions when it comes to the content game?
Yeah, that's a great question, because the biggest hiccup in this process, and where a lot of companies get tripped up and aren't sure if their content, their creator programs are being successful, is they came into it with either the wrong expectations or unclear goals, or they didn't understand the value that they could get out of creator partnerships to begin with. For example, you could enter, into a creator partnership with your goal being, we need content. We need content, right? It is a content play. Really, what we want out of this is we want you to make these assets that we can use on our own channels. We want to maybe amplify it through you, but it's about the content. And if you understand that, then maybe when they post it and it doesn't get a ton of views, it's not the end of the world. right? That also indicates what the type of creator you want to work with. If I really am in this for the content, then the follower size doesn't really matter, right? It's about, are they producing the type of content that I want to use? If I want sales, right? If sales, trackable, attributable sales, then there's completely different tactics that I'm going to want. I mean, that could mean it's an affiliate model that we want to implement, right? That could mean, all right, we want to see how this impacts the bottom line. Let's get integrated with, your mixed modeling system. Let's, implement the right tracking mechanisms from maybe it's promo codes or whatever else we can implement to try to make sure we tie this back to the content. Let's amplify this and make that content immediately clickable. There's a million things we could do there. And if it's influence, right? If you're trying to drive actual brand perception favorability, right? Maybe it's a brand lift study that you're bringing into the equation. It's sentiment, it's looking at comments, it's looking at how something performed from an engagement standpoint relative to critical benchmarks that creator themselves, similar creators, that category, that platform. There's a million things that you can do to set this up so you are not only optimizing for the goals that you want to achieve, but that you are measuring against them. I think, again, where brands get in trouble is where they get into this and they don't really know what they were looking for. They kind of just thought they were going to get a giant sales spike or something, and if that doesn't happen, it's a failure, and that's just not the case.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely see the balance between data and creativity can get very challenging. So how do you think the best way to prepare going to market with a new strategy is?
Poke holes. I think whenever you are trying to roll out a new strategy, the best thing you could do is roll it out internally first and do not be afraid of the feedback. The feedback is a gift. You're going to find out really and truly, if you allow people to speak their mind, where the gold is, right? And where the white noise is. And then you want to double down and triple down on that gold. And that is your headline for your go-to-market. That is what you want to evangelize and put out there. You want to do that in a creative way. So there's certainly more to this, right? It's not just you put that on your website and suddenly people read it and they go, oh my God, I got to have this. There's certainly a lot more to it, but I think you got to poke holes and you got to, then once you really feel like you understand the value and you've doubled down and you've tripled down on the gold nuggets, then it's about delivering that message in a creative way that people are going to pay attention to.
Love it. So in conclusion, I always ask the two questions, who and how, right? So before we get into the how people get a hold of you, who's the person you want to talk to, right? Who's that individual that would be an ideal person for you to help and engage with when it comes to their content strategy?
The people that I'm always eager to talk to are the people who are looking to stay ahead of the curve. And truly, that could be brand marketers, that could be media buyers. But where I pride myself is seeing where the opportunity is in, following the trends. And so, anybody who really isn't just comfortable doing the same thing again and again and wants to find out where the needle is moving, and get out in front of it. Those are the people I want to talk to. A lot of times at Ben Pixels currently, this is going to be media buyers, right? The folks who are buying YouTube, and oftentimes, folks who are also dabbling in content as well. But really, if you're looking to find where you can find, generate outsized ROI, that's what we're doing. We're trying to, help brands really get into YouTube in a really strategic way, because that's where we think the opportunity is in 2025. And, until the next thing comes along.
Love it. Awesome. So how do people get a hold of you? What's the best way to reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can send me an email at justin.zelik@bedpixels.com. You could DM me on LinkedIn. Or you could come knock on my door. No, please don't knock on my door. My wife would not appreciate that. LinkedIn or email would be fantastic.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Justin, thank you so much for spending the time with us. We really appreciate it. And anyone who's in the audience that fits that profile, reach out to Justin because he knows what he's doing, as you can hear. Thank you so much for your time, man.
Thanks, Gabe. Thanks, Lexi. This was a pleasure.